Hello there, my name is Jason Dane, and I'm creating this video to walk you through how to create this image of the moon that I did that combines three images. One exposure for the stars, one exposure for the Earthshine, and another exposure for the illuminated or visible crescent of the moon. So I'm going to show you basically all the steps that I followed in Photoshop to combine these three images to get this result. So we'll start off by loading up each of the three images, starting with the moon. So in Photoshop, I'm going to go to File, Open, and in my directory structure here, I'm going to go to my working files folder where I have these, and I'm going to start off with the visible moon. So this is a raw file, so camera raw will pop up first where I can make some adjustments to the raw file that I shot. So in this case, I'm going to raise the clarity up a little bit to get some more sharpness. I'm going to increase the vibrance to get a little color into the moon, as well as a little bit of saturation. I'm going to mess with the highlights and the shadows a bit, just to get the result that I'm looking for. And again, this can be to your own taste to get the result that you're interested in. I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to click Open Image, and that will give me the starting point for my work. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my Earthshine picture. So I'll grab that and hit Open, and again we'll see Camera Raw. In Camera Raw, I'm going to do a similar process where I'm going to make a few adjustments. So I'm a little underexposed here, so I'm going to raise my exposure up to about there. I'm going to drop the highlights down a little bit just to make things look a little nicer. And I'm just going to adjust my color temperature a little bit to get it to match a little closer the other image. Okay, then I'm going to hit Open Image and bring that into Photoshop as well. Now both of these images were taken on a tripod from the same location, so they should line up pretty well, but they won't line up exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Earthshine photo, and using the shortcut, so Control A, select all, and I think on a Mac it's I forget what the name of the button is, but I think it's Option A, and then Control C or Option C, which basically puts it on the clipboard, and then I'm going to go over to my other shot and I'm going to paste it in. So now I have a layer for the Earthshine and a layer for the visible moon. And I want the Earthshine on top, and what I'm going to do next is adjust the opacity to make things fit the way that I want. But before I go any further, what I'm going to do is save this out as another document so that I don't accidentally overwrite my raw files, because then I would lose that data. And I think, one of the key principles in Photoshop is to edit non-destructively as much as possible. So I'm going to call this one Working Moon 2. You can see my Working Moon 1 practice run. So now basically I've got a file here that is going to protect my original data but allow me to make my edits. So I can close this Earthshine photo without saving any changes. So now if I toggle the visibility, you can see, I'm just going to zoom in here. So if I zoom in and I toggle the visibility, you can see that things don't quite line up. So what I'll do is I'll flip the opacity down to 50% or on the first layer, or about 50%, and then I'm going to grab the move tool, which is up here, and I'm going to just move the moon over until it looks like it's in the right spot. Now, for fine adjustments, I can also use the cursor keys and zoom in quite close. So what I want to do is I want these 2 points right here to line up, and then I can look over here and see that things line up pretty well. Shortcut here is hold the space bar on any tool that you're on and you can pan. So I'm just going to flip this on and flip it off, and it looks pretty good. You'll see here that there's some outer glow where the overexposed portion of the moon is basically showing, but that will get covered up as we go along. So I will put my opacity back to 100%. I'm going to hit save again, and then I'm going to go to the next step. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put a layer mask on the Earthshine layer with a white layer mask, and then I'm going to make sure that my brush is black, and if it's not black, you can hit this little button down here to make it black and white, and then set it black. And then the next thing I'm going to do is grab the gradient tool. So if the gradient tool isn't on your toolbar, you can just go to, I think it's Edit Toolbar, and you can add it in here from the extra tools. So what I'm going to do here is grab the gradient tool, got my black brush. So basically what I want to do is I want to have a transition that goes between, or that's basically going to cover this section of the glow and transition nicely between the Earthshine and the visible moon. So I'm going to start somewhere around here and go. You can hold shift to make it a straight line, but since that straight line it seems to snap to 90 and 45, which isn't quite what I want, but I want to kind of go right down the middle of the moon and click somewhere in here. And when I do that, you'll see I actually got a pretty good transition that first click, but you can still see some haze around the outside. The tricky part is knowing where to actually do this. So you can do it a number of times till you find that you get it right, but you don't need to get too worried about it, because if you go too far, you'll basically blacken out some of the moon, and just depending on your taste, that can be okay. So here I'll do it again even further, and actually that looks pretty good. You'll also notice that there's a transition between the black sky on the visible moon and the bluer, sky of the Earthshine, because I was getting a little bit more color. It wasn't quite perfectly dark yet, so I'm going to show you how to fix that as well. So basically, now what I want to do is I want to mask out this part of the image. So I want to only keep the Earthshine, but I want to keep the rest of the other. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to hit Control, Alt, Shift, and E, which will create a new layer, which is essentially a merge of the layers below it. And I think on a Mac it's Alt or Option. I don't really know. Sorry. Basically, what I'm going to do is draw a circle over this and use that as a clipping tool to clip basically just the part of the image that I want. So what I'm going to do is grab the ellipse tool over here, and again, if you need to grab it, you can do Edit and make it visible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm holding Shift will make a circle. I'm going to make a circle, and I'm going to get it approximately right. And you'll see here what happened is I let go of Shift before I let go of the mouse button. So you have to let go of the mouse button before you let go of Shift. So I'm going to hit Control Z, which undoes it, and I'm going to do it again. So Shift, click on the edge, draw my moon, let go of the mouse button, let go of shift. Okay, so now that I've got my moon and I want to move it, so what I can do here is hold shift, or actually hold control, and just grab anywhere on the moon and I can drag it around. And you can see here that I did pretty well, but I'm still a little too big. So what I can do here is go over here where it says the width and the height, and for my case it's 1958 is the exact size. So I'll go 1958 and 1958 to keep it a circle, and then just tab out of that, and then I can hit control and I can adjust it to where I want. And you can see here, if I zoom in some and I hold control, I can use the arrow keys to move it, and you can see that it's still too big. So let's try 1940 or so. 1940 EX, and then I can hold down control, I can move it, and so this takes a little bit of fiddling to get it right. Let's go a little smaller even. Let's say 1920. So then I'm going to hold control. And for the purposes of this, that's going to be good enough. Okay, so now what I want to do is create a layer mask using that circle. And basically what it'll do is it'll show through to the black background underneath. So I'm going to get this wrong, I think, but I think if I just add the layer mask, oops, sorry, I forgot a step. Sorry, back up. What you need to do is right click on the edge and go make selection. But first you got to make sure that this drop down up here says path. So it's set the path, right click on here, say make selection, and I just put a small feather on it just to ease the transition and make it a new selection, and hit OK. So now I have a perfect circle selection that's clipping out it's clipping out maybe a little bit more than I'd like along here, but it's not a perfect circle. So then basically what I'm going to do is create a layer mask. So when I do that, I get I get the layer mask, and basically I think I want to invert it just to get the no, actually that's not true. I want to keep it this way so that I've got a black covering and then the white showing through, and then I want to turn off this middle layer. And basically when I do that, I get a nice clean or mostly clean shot of what I'd like to do. And if I don't quite like that circle, I can go back, and in this case you see I've got a little bit of artifacts here, so I'd actually need to go back and adjust that circle a few times, a little bit, to get it look like the way that I want it to look. Okay, so then basically all I have to do is go in and add my stars. So I'll say open, I'm going to add my star field, and in this case I took a bunch of stars photos when I was out there, but I had something, I think I was still on moon tracking instead of sidereal tracking rate, so I got stars that were trailed, so they're no good. So in this case I'm just going to use an image of M31 Andromeda. It's a nice clean star field. I know it's not exactly right, but it's good enough for the purposes of this picture. Basically everything looks okay. I can make any changes that I want, so I'm just going to dim the star field down a little bit because I don't want too many stars, and I don't want this haze from the galaxy to show up So basically that looks good. I'm going to mess with my color balance a little bit and make it a little more blue, and then hit open. And then once I've got that loaded, it's basically the same as before. Control A, Control C, go into my layer, paste this in. Now because this is on top, it's going to cover everything, so I want to drag this down to the bottom. And then now that it's there, I can take my crop tool and I can make this look kind of like it looks in the final image. So it's best to keep things uncropped and the same image size with the same camera so that things line up a little nicer. So once you're in here, you can, if you want to, in this case here, I may want to adjust the Earthshine. So I can take the color balance tool and I can you know, bring it in here and then apply a clipping mask, which will basically only adjust this layer here. So if I want to, you know, make things a little more gray or blue, I can do that. And if I, you know, for example, if I wanted to just make that color balance adjustment to here, I could either go back to this step and make the adjustment, or I could invert this mask and then using a white brush, I can just go in here and just paint, you know, paint in just approximately over the Earthshine part. And then now, as I make changes, you'll see they only impact the Earthshine. So I could do that with exposure. I can do that with basically whatever I want to. And if you want to ease that or soften that transition between the Earthshine and the you know, the rest of it, you can basically select the mask and go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then pick a, you know, number 100 or 200, just depending on what you want, and that will basically soften soften the edges quite a bit. So there you have it. This image was basically inspired by an image that I had seen a while ago from on a YouTube video. I believe it's a guy. I'll just see if I can find this real quick here. Actually, what I'll do is I'll include the link in the video, and also from a friend of mine, Simon D'Entremont, who posted a similar picture like this, but without the Earthshine. Got me thinking about how I could try to incorporate this element into the photo just to make it more interesting. Okay, I'll also post a link to the data that I'll share on OneDrive in case you want to try this out on your own. Okay, thanks very much for watching. Hi there, it's Jason here again. I forgot something. Actually, when I was looking at the video, I realized that I had forgotten to show how to add the little bit of glow down here on the moon. So what I can do is I can go in and I can turn on the Earthshine layer. I can clone this and basically turn this into a basically delete this layer mask, and then by holding Alt and then creating the layer mask, I can shut it off. So let me get back to where I should be here. Okay, so basically what I want to do now that I'm here is I want to show some of the glow along here. So basically what I'm going to do is with a white brush, big and soft brush, and I'm only going to set it about 20% opacity. I'm going to paint white just along here on the fringe, and just to bring in some of that glow. Now what I don't want to do, you'll see here, is that I've got this fringe. So what and I've also basically exposed a little bit of this galaxy from my starfield. So what I'm going to need to do is go to my starfield, and I'm going to clone that out real quick, and then I'm going to go back here with my brush and make the brush a little bigger, and get rid of all that. And I'm going, oops, I did the wrong tool. So undo, 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 too far, redo. Okay, so I'm going to go to my starfield. I'm going to clone this out. Okay, then I'm going to go here to my layer mask, grab my brush, and then just paint over here, and you'll see some of that glow starts to come in. You know, the more I press and click, the more I'm going to get. So in order to soften this, what I can do is I can click on here, go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I can make a great big number in here, like 300, and that should soften it up. I can also potentially move this this layer. I'm going to do 200 in this case here. Get some more of that. So you see here, you can see there's a black line, which you wouldn't want that. So what I can do is grab the move tool, and I can just nudge that so that the transition line isn't as abrupt, and I can move that over. So there, and that gives you that little bit of glow effect, and that's, you know, that's up to your own personal taste, but that's how you would add that in. Okay, thank you.